So I'm here with Mayor Bruce Tucker of Piermont, the Village of Piermont. Mayor Tucker, do I have your permission to record your image and your voice?
Yes.
Thank you very much. So please welcome to this Piermont Remembers project. We're creating an oral history record for to commemorate the 125th anniversary of the Piermont Library. So as part of our collection, please share with us some of your Piermont memories.
Okay. Well, I moved to Piermont in 1990. I grew up on Long Island, went to school in Binghamton at SUNY Binghamton. After that, I ended up getting a job in Rockland County and lived around the county for a few years. And being a musician and having a band, ultimately, I discovered the Turning Point in Piermont and Piermont. We went to see some shows. Eventually, my band started playing at the Turning Point, and that's when I fell in love with Piermont. So this is like the late 80s, 87, 88, that we were playing at the Turning Point. Eventually, my wife, Sarah, and I bought a house up on Piermont Place in 1990. I remember the day that we were moving in. We live almost directly across the street from Tom Chapin, and the front door was open because the moving van guys were bringing furniture in, and out of nowhere, Tom Chapin's black lab just struts into the house, and the house had been built. It had been built a year before we moved in. We were the first ones to buy it, and Tom's dog just walks right in and right into the kitchen and lays down like he owns the place. So there's a funny memory, but we, at the time, I had just started my business in the home textiles industry. I made bed sheets at a factory in Elizabeth, New Jersey. So I commuted to Elizabeth for 20 years, from 1990 to 2010. Ultimately, when I sold my business and worked with that company for about 3 years, and then I retired. And I decided at that point that I wanted to start giving back to the community, being that when I had my company, I was typically out the door at 6 a.m. and back in at 8 p.m. And so I really didn't know the community. And so my goal was to get involved. And I got onto the board of the Rockland Center for the Arts. And then I got on the board of the Piermont Library and then the Piermont Historical Society. And then in 2016, election night of 2016, I ran into Chris Sanders, the then current mayor of Piermont, and who told me that he was up for re-election the following year, and that he was not going to run for re-election after serving as mayor for 10 years. So I decided that night that being mayor of Piermont is something I'd like to try to do. So I declared my candidacy, and in 2017, I ran a campaign to be the next mayor of Piermont. And at the caucus in September, we still had a caucus then, here at Village Hall, I won. Actually, I won by 5 votes and became the next mayor and the current mayor of Piermont. So I took office on January 1st of 2018. So I'm about to finish my 4th year as mayor. I also just won the primary this past June for another 2 years. So I plan on moving ahead, keep going. But the reason why I ran again is because I love being mayor of Piermont. It's a great village. It's a real community, 2,600 residents roughly. And between the location being on the river, being a half hour from New York City, but more than that, when you're here, you really feel like you're in a community. We have our own police department. We have our own fire department. We have our own DPW. And we have our own library. It's a real community feeling here, almost like family. And what I've learned is at times as people fight here like family. But overall, it's a great experience. You know, a lot of memories, you know, come to mind of being mayor. I've learned a lot. This was my first time in public office, but I've had to declare three weather emergencies, states of emergency for the village of Piermont in my almost 4 years, which is really incredible on the one hand, that you wouldn't think that we would have three weather events that would within 3.5 years that would cause me to have to declare a state of emergency. But I think that in itself is a real testament to climate change. And for different reasons, one, snow for one, a massive nor'easter, and then this last one was remnants, not even a hurricane, remnants of a hurricane that caused more flooding than the hurricane that hit us a week and a half before that. So really, it's been a little crazy. But then, of course, and something that I never calculated or thought of when I signed on and became mayor was having to guide the village through a worldwide pandemic. And that in itself was a major challenge. But I will say, again, the great thing about living in a small village, all the different factions came together. The police, the fire department, the DPW, everybody came together, and all the trustees of my board all did a fantastic job. It was very challenging, trying to keep people calm, trying to keep the residents safe. We had to eventually end up closing the pier because people were coming from all over, and we had to be where every other municipality around us was closing their parks. People were coming to Piermont. The governor at the time had actually left Tallman Mountain Park, all the state parks open. So people were coming to Piermont, even if it was just to go into Tallman Mountain State Park. But they were also going out on the pier. We had to close the pier. We had to eventually close our Erie Trail, close our parks. The Flywheel Park, we had to fence it off, all to discourage people from coming and just trying to keep the streets safe for the residents. And but I think overall, we did a good job. We did lose some residents to COVID, including a couple of very prominent residents, which was the sad part. But overall, I think that we did a good job keeping people calm, keeping people safe. We put up signs around the village, reminding people to mask up, to stay 6 feet away from each other. And all of this was being done from my home, essentially. I was quarantined just like everybody else. So it was a challenge, but I feel that we all, as a community, came together and rose up to face the challenge. And of course, it's still not over. Who knew a year and a half later that even with vaccines, we'd still have to mask up indoors in crowds and still try to maintain safe distances. And but hopefully it gets better from here. But So overall, I think my experience as mayor has been a very positive one. Hopefully for the village, I feel it has been a positive step for the village. I think one of the items I'm most proud of is the fact that one of our prominent citizens who unfortunately did pass away from COVID, Bob Samuels, he had started a campaign a few years back to close the pier to automobiles 3 days of summer, one day in June, one day in July, one day in August. Seeing the amount of traffic on that pier, one of the first things I did when I became mayor was to get a local law passed that the pier is closed to cars every Sunday from May 1st till the end of September, and just give people a real natural experience of walking out on that pier into the middle of the Hudson River without the fear of having to dodge cars or honking and the amount of residents that have contacted me saying how great it is. But there's always challenges. Every day is a new challenge. But again, I love living in Piermont. I love being the mayor. And I think we have one of the greatest, most unique villages probably in the country. So that's pretty much most of my memories that come to mind. We get a lot of visitors who, and especially after COVID, we've actually had a lot of new people move up, a lot of young families move up from the city, from Brooklyn, from Manhattan, and coming here for the same reason, that village, small village feel where we're right on the river. And even though we're a half hour from Manhattan, you feel like hundreds of miles away. I think that's pretty much most of my experiences here. It's been a great honor to serve the residents of the village of Piermont, New York.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Recently, I heard you discuss one of the aspects of climate change, and that was the way that water is a threat. And you talked about the water actually, even though everyone is focused on the river, that it comes from both directions. So maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, that is one thing about Piermont, probably the flip side of its beauty of being on a hillside with a waterfront. We have a double-edged sword. We get, when there's bad storms come in, tidal storms, because the Hudson River is tidal. There is always the danger of getting flooded, and we do get periodically flooded from the Hudson River side. So all the homes along the river, all the homes we have low-lying areas, Bogertown, the Patch, Paradise Avenue, all the way up to Sparkhill Creek, up to the dam. It's all tidal. And so we have the one danger of getting flooded from the river. And then we have the second danger of what we just experienced, where we have, I think it was 7 inches of rain in 3 hours, and it just came cascading down the mountainside and flooding homes, destroying property. We ended up with a pile of rocks on Piermont, down at the bottom on Piermont Avenue, a pile of rocks that literally were washed down from the top of the mountain behind us. And so that is the big problem. I went to visit a home on 9W that was badly damaged from the floods coming down from Tweed all the way down to 9W and then beyond. And she was like, well, nobody told me that I needed flood insurance. I'm halfway up a mountain. Why do I need flood insurance? And the bottom line is we have flood zones along the Hudson River, but we also have flood zones on the mountain that when storms like this do occur, and what were once 1 in 100-year storms or 1 in 500-year storms are now turning out to be like once a year, or so it's really we have some challenges to say the least, both again to stop with sea level rise. We anticipate there's models already that show that parts of Piermont will be permanently underwater in 50 years. On top of that, how do we deal with if there's going to be these type of rain events? I'm not sure you could dig a drain or culvert big enough to handle the when it rains 3 inches in an hour. So yes, as great as a place Piermont is to live, we also have our challenges, and which are going to become even greater in the years ahead as the climate continues to change the way it's on the certainly on the trend that it's been on right now. Yeah.
Did you were here in the village during Sandy, right? I know you were in
Yes.
the office. Can you just share? Because I know we've had 1 or 2 people speak of it, but it's good to hear different perspectives about how.
Yeah, and there again, I was not the mayor at the time. I was, but I was home. It was not really a rain event as much as it was a wind event for people living up on the hill, for me. So when the power went out at I forget, it was about maybe 9 o'clock. It was obviously due to the amount of trees being blown over into the power lines. What I did not realize until the next morning when I walked downtown was how the river just came right in and right up to onto Piermont Avenue, and literally picking up boats off of the marinas and eventually dropping them right in the middle of Piermont Avenue, from the TZ Marina on down to downtown. And homes along the river were badly flooded, badly damaged. But I think the thing that sticks out most to me is literally these boats sitting on Piermont Avenue, just like deposited there. And it was like, oh my God, how bad. I remember Gerhardt's garage was still under 4 or 5 feet of water. It's a low point there. It was bad. And then I also remember when Senator Kristen Gillibrand came to visit, and we walked around town. It was bad. But I'd like to say that Sandy was the worst, and probably money-wise compared. But then I see what happened just this past week ago, and it's bad for a different reason. But people definitely affected. Sandy, the good thing about Sandy is I think it's really when it made the residents of Piermont aware. It was really the awakening for Piermont of climate change. Not that it wouldn't have happened anyway, but certainly with sea level being higher than it was, 10, 20, 30 years ago, it definitely had an effect. And so it was an awakening. And so they started studying what can we do to mitigate this. They came up with a long-range waterfront revitalization plan, which has been serving as our comp plan as terms of development. We're looking at different ideas of how to keep Piermont going for the next 50, 60, 70 years without, if it may mean moving the downtown area higher up on the mountain somehow. It might mean moving Village Hall. These are all things we're looking at. And all of this is because of Sandy, that this awareness even came about. So I would say that's the biggest effect that Sandy had on this village, was just to say, hello, wow, we are vulnerable to these type of events when we're not insulated. And what makes Piermont so great of having an accessible waterfront with restaurants on the water, marinas, boat launches, everything that makes it great about that is what makes us vulnerable, because there are other villages up and down the Hudson River that are on the river, but not necessarily at river level. A lot of them are raised, a lot of them have a little buffer before a tidal event would affect them. So it's, it's like when you live in paradise, I guess once in a while, you have to pay for it.
That's right. It's the rent. Well, or the mortgage. Well, thank you very, very much. If you have any final words, but this is very, very important to have in this collection of oral histories. I thank you for your time this morning.
No, I thank you very much. And hopefully this will help future generations understand what was happening in Piermont at the time. And I thank you very much for doing this. It's a great thing.
My pleasure. Thank you. Thank you so much. So I'm going to end the recording.